Okay, busy day. I'm at Chris's parents' house right now, and yesterday we came here from my cottage, and now we have to go from here to my apartment. And all we have to do now is pack the car, and once we get home, we can edit some portraits. Let's do it.
I was walking by the ocean, feeling all emotion, when she came right up next to me. Time stood still right there. We rode the sun, we became one. We rode the sun, we became one.
Now that we're here and all of that moving around is done, let's get down to business. So Lightroom is one of my favorite programs to edit in, mainly because it's so straightforward, intuitive, and allows you to create really professional results. Part of editing like a pro is paying attention to little details, because it's not always those really fancy effects that make a great photo. Now, when it comes to editing portraits, there's a few things that I always do. So I'm gonna walk you guys through some of these photos and show you how effective some of these tips can be, all in Lightroom. The very first thing I'll do is correct the photo if it's a little bit crooked and make sure that everything's level and straight. And it's okay if you didn't get this perfectly right the first time. It's hard to do it in camera, but this is that opportunity to correct a little bit and make sure it's 100% straight and 100% level. So a great way to do that in post is pay attention to windows or walls or corners that you can use to level the photo. With this particular photo, you can see that it's a little bit crooked, and you can tell by the windowsill. So all I'm gonna do is use that as a guideline to straighten the photo out, and that looks pretty good. That looks not bad, but what's bothering me a little bit is this lamp in the corner. So I'm gonna try and crop it a little bit just to see what I can do to fix it. And I think that looks pretty good. Might use the edge of that wall just to level it out a bit more, and great, I really like that. Another really great tool is the gradient filter, and you can use this to lighten and darken edges of your photo to sort of bring your eye into the subject. So as you can see with this photo, I'm going to use the gradient filter to just darken this left side here so that you're not focusing on that bit of the wall. Now your eye is drawn more towards the girl. And then I'm going to lighten the window area because I think the things that are happening outside of the window are a bit distracting. It's some flags, and I kind of want to make it look like there's this really glowing light coming through the window. And I mean, you can spend a lot more time doing this effect, but I find a really fast and easy way that'll get you great results is just with that gradient filter. So that's before and that's after. So aside from putting any kind of Lightroom preset on that photo and doing actual color tweaks to it, you can really see how leveling that photo out and using those two gradient filters makes a huge difference in just sort of bringing your eye towards the subject. And that's really important in any portrait, is you don't want there to be other distracting elements going on. With this next photo, I'm gonna talk about cropping. Cropping is really important if you've taken a photo that's a little bit too wide, or you're finding that your eye is wandering a bit from the subject in that photo. So taking out some distracting elements with a crop is a great way to do that. So when you look at this photo, you can see that there's a few unflattering elements. There's some people in the background. So we really just want to punch in a little bit. And you definitely don't want to be cropping out anyone's limbs or anything. You don't want to crop out her elbow or the top of her head. So I think that looks a lot better already. So again, I've straightened and leveled out the photo by using the placemat, just because it was bothering me that it was a bit crooked. The only thing that's still bothering me is this bit of like dead space in front of her, and I think the issue is it's a bit too lit. Now, if I could take this photo again, I would definitely move that girl in the background, but I can't this time. So all I'm gonna do is add another gradient filter. So I'm just gonna darken that area out a bit to draw your eye more towards the girl. Cropping, straightening, and adding gradient filters, really, really simple ways to draw your eye more towards the subject and to really level up that photo and make it look more professional. Here is the before and after of that photo. So I know this photo isn't actually a portrait, but if I was turned around, it would be. So the first thing I'm gonna do is add a radial filter. I'm just gonna put that over my body, and don't forget to check invert mask at the bottom if you're trying to either brighten or darken whatever is in the center of that radial mask, because otherwise it's gonna be adjusting everything outside of it. So click invert, and I'm just going to place that where I want it, and make sure that it's not overexposed, but it is brightening the center of the image and feather out the edges. The next thing I'm going to do is pull down another gradient filter, surprise, surprise, and I'm going to lighten the top of the frame just because I want it to look like that island in the distance is really foggy and far away, and this is just a really fast way to do that. So the reason I'm showing you, things like the radio filter and the gradient filter over and over again is because I just want to show you guys the different ways that it can be used just by lightening or darkening that portion of the frame. And I mean, you can even bring down the clarity in certain areas if you want to blur them out a little bit more than they already are. That's another great way to use it. But I find just playing with lights and darks really helps. So I'm adding another radial filter right now, and that's just going to create this sort of pathway in front of me out into the water because I want it to look far away and I want your eye to be drawn into the center of the image and at me. So in this scenario, I'm actually just going to darken the edges instead of brightening the center of that radial filter, so I won't hit invert this time. And I just want to darken only those bottom corners of the image, so I'm grabbing my brush tool and I'm just going to darken those edges. Yeah, I think that is looking really good. One last thing that you can do by using the brush tool is if there's hair in the image, I'll usually add a bit of clarity there just because I really like when you can look at a photo and almost feel the textures in it. I'll often even lighten it a little bit just so that it pops a bit more. And that's the before and after of that photo, so I'm really happy with it. So this is one of my favorite photos. A really important thing when picking a portrait or when you're actually shooting that portrait on set is to really pay attention to the eye line. So I know this isn't something you can change in post, but when you're selecting which photo to edit, really pay attention to where their eyes are looking. I love portraits when the subject is turned towards a window and they're looking up a bit and their eyes are looking up and out of the window and you get this really nice glistening effect on their eyes. You can even see the difference. I'm going to be editing this photo. Here are some other ones I took that I just don't like as much. So she is looking out the window, but there's more of a shadow on her face. You can't see how beautiful and big her eyes are because she's looking down. So anyways, let's get started on this photo. Like I mentioned about eyeline, another really important thing to do with portraits is to edit their eyes. The first thing I'm going to do is just use the iris enhance. That's already sort of given to you as a preset, but you can adjust it as well in Lightroom. And I'll color in her entire eye, both eyes. And then this is when I kind of start to do my own thing. So you can either play with the exposure after on the entire eye, and then I'll go in with my brush tool and I'm just going to do the sort of colored area of her eye and color that in. And once I have it all selected, I'm going to bring the shadows up because that's when you start to really see all of that texture behind the color of her eyes. And in this example, she does have very dark eyes, but you'll notice on someone who has light eyes like me, you'll really just get a lot more color and vibrance from their eyes in doing this. Then I'll adjust the clarity as well. Once I'm finished with those effects, I'll usually go into the temperature and the tint. And if it's someone with green eyes, I might add a little bit more green, but not intensely, just a little bit. Or if it's someone with blue eyes, I'll add a little bit more blue. Or in this case, because she has brown eyes, I might add some more yellow to get that really hazily color in her eyes, just to make them pop more. And then zoom out to make sure you haven't actually tweaked anything too much because often you can get a bit carried away when you're zoomed in. You're thinking, wow, this looks great, and you're really pushing up the shadows and everything, and you zoom out and then you're like, wow, she looks like a vampire. That's a bit too much. That's not natural at all. So the next thing I'll do at this stage is I'll start spot removing different imperfections and blemishes on her face. She actually has really nice skin, so there isn't a ton I want to do here, and I want to make sure that I'm still keeping the texture of her skin. I don't want her to look airbrushed and fake. A lot of people can get carried away with softening skin at this point, but try not to do that because you still want your subject to look natural, and there's definitely a way to do this that doesn't make it look over-processed. So I'm just taking out some of those really obvious little bumps that I find a bit distracting. But again, she has really nice skin. After I've done all that spot removal, I'll go in and select the soften skin effect in the brush tool. And I'll adjust the clarity. I don't want it to be too intense when it's cranked all the way down and she just looks airbrushed and fake. I don't want that. So I'm just gonna bring the clarity down a little bit and bring the sharpness up. And you can always adjust this after you've colored everything in and bring it down more. Start small and then increase the effect later as you think that it's needed. So here you can see this is if I brought the clarity all the way down. You can see how dramatic that is. And if I brought the sharpness and the clarity all the way up, you can see that that's also too much. So find a nice balance between the two. So this may take some time to perfect and to get it to a level where you want. I'm just going to make sure that I'm covering her chest as well, because you don't want to do just her face because then, you know, the skin won't match. But I do want to make sure that her skin looks very creamy and natural, but still textured. So I did spend a little bit more time than I am right now in showing you this demonstration. Another thing you can do is go over some of the highlighted points of someone's face. So I'm just going over on her bottom lip and on her cupid's bow and down the bridge of her nose and a little bit on her cheek, where all those points where it's catching the light, just to make her look a bit more glowy. I find it helps. And you can also do the opposite and go in and contour her face as well, but just make sure that you're not overdoing it here as well. Again, I'm gonna add gradient filters. So behind her and then a little bit in front of her, just to draw your eye towards her. And again, I've just gone over her hair and I've brought up the clarity and a bit of the shadows just so you can see that texture in it and it's not fading too much into the shadows. So here's that photo before and after. You may not notice all of these effects individually making a huge difference, but as a whole, it really helps make your photo look more professional and really levels up your look. And again, this is all done in Lightroom. These are really, really simple tweaks. We haven't even gone into Photoshop. I repeated some of the same tools over and over again, just used in a different way. Those were some of my editing tips in Lightroom. I really hope you guys enjoyed them and that you found them helpful. And as always, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you're not already, and hit the bell so you get notified when I post a new video every week. See you guys later.